You cannot have a crooked haircut, and of course you just go by eye, pretty much, trying to make it pretty straight. And then the boys, they shave their beard until before they join the church. They shave it, and then once they join the church, they let it grow out about an inch. And then once they get married, they do not trim it. They're not supposed to trim it, nothing like that. They gotta let it grow. However, you're hoping for a good full beard, or you never know, you might get a little goat beard or something. So
Welcome to Heroes Behind Headlines. I'm your host, Ralph Pizzulo. Our guest today is Elmer Miller. Elmer, who is in his 20s and stands 3 feet 11 inches tall, was born into a strict Amish community in upstate New York, close to the Canadian border. He recently chose to leave it for reasons he will explain. Life in the Amish community where Elmer grew up was dictated by Ortnog, a set of guidelines for daily living, which are different to some extent between individual churches. They include prohibitions or limitations on the use of power line electricity, telephones, and automobiles, as well as regulations on clothing. New York has the fastest growing and 5th largest Amish population in the United States. According to the website Amish America, 21,000 Amish live in New York State in 59 districts and nearly 170 church districts. Because the Amish are usually baptized no earlier than 18, and children are not counted in local congregations, estimating their numbers is difficult. The total number of Amish in the United States, based on various studies, was around 125,000 in 1992, 166,000 in 2000, and 241,000 in 2010. And they reside in communities in 28 states. It's my great honor to welcome Elmer Miller as today's hero behind the headlines.
Heroes Behind Headlines with Ralph Pizzulo.
okay, so obviously my name is Elmer Miller, for those people that don't know who I am. I was born in upstate New York, about 20 minutes from the Canadian border, and I was in the Amish community, where it was like the lowest order as far as the strictest. They had like the strictest rules. The way I was born into. Some call it the Amish cult, or however you may say so. Yeah, my father, he had 400 acres when I was a little kid, growing up on the farm, and we grew a lot of produce. There was like 15 of us kids in the family.
Wow, 15.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big family. One mother?
Yep, all one mother.
Wow.
Of course, obviously, I was the only little guy. I'm only 3 foot 11 inches tall. I was born that way. And I was pretty unfortunate, because a lot of little people have a lot of medical problems. I've been pretty fortunate about that part. I'm pretty healthy as far as I know.
That's great.
And yeah, I was the 10th child in the family. There's like 4 younger than me.
Okay. Now, how big was your community? How many people, roughly?
Boy, that's a good question. I should probably know this. There was just our community right in this upstate New York. I'm thinking probably 500-600 families.
Okay.
And then there was quite a few different groups of church, or quite a few group of churches, all the same. And then like 3 different types of churches. They're all kind of had the same rules and stuff.
And the rules are pretty strict, is that right?
Yeah, the rules are pretty strict. Like, they pretty much have a rule on everything as far as how you dress and how your haircut is. The girls are not allowed to cut their hair. The Amish boys have their hair cut down right here, straight up. straight to the front, and the forehead straight haircut. You cannot have a crooked haircut, and of course you just go by eye, pretty much trying to make it pretty straight. And then the boys, they shave their beard until before they join the church. They shave it, and then once they join the church, they let it grow out about an inch. And then once they get married, they do not trim it. They're not supposed to trim it, nothing like that. They got to let it grow
At all. They just let it grow out.
Yeah, and
Wow.
you're hoping for a good full beard, or you never
Wow.
know, you might get a little goat beard or something. So
Wow. And you wear particular clothing, right? No colors, is that correct?
we wore denim jeans, blue clothes. A lot of shirt stuff was blue.
Yeah.
That goes to the men. And we had a wool hat in the wintertime, and then we had a Amish-made straw hat in the summertime.
Uh-huh.
Now, as far as goes to the girl, they have a couple different colored dresses. And when they fold it and stuff and they iron it, it's got to be certain widths, and there's rules on pretty much everything, how they wear their bonnet.
Wow.
And how they make their hair up. It cannot be too much in a ball. It's kind of got to be flat so it don't look too worldly.
Yeah. Wow.
If you may say so.
Yeah, yeah. This is very interesting. And where do they get these rules from? Are these just like traditions, or do they come from the Bible?
There's a lot of traditions, and then also they don't believe in men letting their hair grow out too long because of there's something in the Bible about Simpson. I don't know too much about it.
Yeah.
About growing too long hair, and he got too strong, too powerful.
Yeah.
It caused some problem.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reason for the men not cutting.
Okay.
That they have to cut their hair.
Okay. Now, the Amish come from, it's a Dutch religion in origin.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Pennsylvania Dutch.
Pennsylvania Dutch. And are there Amish people in the Netherlands, as far as you know, or is it strictly an American kind of phenomena?
There probably is. I believe that's where they kind of start off.
Okay.
Netherlands, Switzerland, German. They're Pennsylvania Dutch, but it's there's German mix into it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little mixture.
Okay.
To find Amish that actually speaks pure Dutch is kind of rare. Just because they talk to us American people or us worldly people, some call us however they want to call us, I guess.
The Amish Church came into being as the result of a schism within a group of Swiss and Alsatian Mennonite Anabaptists in 1693. The dispute was over a number of issues, including frequency of communion and how church discipline should be carried out. Those who followed Swiss leader Jacob Amann, who tended to be strict in his interpretations, became known as Amish. In the second half of the 19th century, the Amish divided further into Old Order Amish and Amish Mennonites who did not abstain from using motor cars. The Old Order Amish, on the other hand, retained much of their traditional culture. When people refer to the Amish today, they usually refer to the Old Order Amish, who are one of three main subgroups: Old Order Amish, New Order Amish, and Beachy Amish, all of whom wear plain dress and live their lives according to the Bible as codified in their church's Ordnung, or set of rules. The Old Order Amish and New Order Amish conduct their worship in German, speak Pennsylvania Dutch, and use buggies for transportation. In contrast, the Beachy Amish use modern technology and conduct worship in the local language of the area in which they reside. Both New Order Amish and Beachy Amish emphasize the new birth, or spiritual regeneration by God's grace and power. In the early 18th century, many Amish and Mennonites started to immigrate to Pennsylvania.
So, yeah, it's like they left the English or us worldly people way back in the days, and they just kind of went their own way, and they try to keep everything hidden from the government and stuff like that. And now, as far as horse and bucky, there's rules about how they make their buckies and stuff like that. Up here, there's New York State law as far as their reflectors. They have strips all the way around, and they have one lander, kerosene lander in a metal box that hangs on the corner of the bucky, and it has one red reflector on the back side of that box.
Uh-huh.
And it's not like the cars are going faster now.
Yeah.
Back in the days when that was put in, there was a lot of dirt road and stuff. Now the cars are doing 60 mile an hour.
Yeah.
There's a lot more bucky accident going on.
Yeah.
They're down in Ohio. They're pushing that to put a triangle more reflect stuff on the bucky. So
you can't use any electricity,
yeah,
any sort of modern conveniences. You can't use
no electricity.
Okay.
No TV. No. They're pretty much strictly away. No cell phone. No alcohol. Now, obviously, with alcohol in the Amish, once you join the church, you can have some wine or brandy for your own health, for a cold or flu or something. But if you're not married yet, you have to ask your parents, and you can only have enough to help you. You cannot get drunk on it.
Yeah. Wow. So it's a pretty strict but simple rural life.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot like, I guess, us American people, how they were back in 1800s. It's like a lot of the rules is tradition. It's an old tradition. They will not easy change something.
Yeah. And how do they maintain the rules? They have councils of people that sort of okay.
So there's like in each church there's like 4 or 5 elders, a couple elders and a bishop. And the bishop, when there's a problem with something, the elders go see that, you may say that person and talk to them, and then it goes to the bishop and then goes back and forth. You cannot bring anything new in the church, like as far as you cannot go buy just something without talking to the bishop if it's a new item.
Oh, wow.
In like as far as the store or something like that.
Yeah. So the community is completely self-sufficient.
Yeah, pretty much. They don't do much shopping. I mean, obviously they go out. Now, it's getting more and more. Some go out and buy sugar or flour and stuff, but a lot of them have their own place where they make their own flour with wheat and stuff.
Wow.
And they make their own either syrup sugar or sorghum sugar, cooking with that. Yeah.
Wow. So as a kid growing up in a community like that, I mean, you don't really know anything different exists, right?
Yeah, you don't really, other than you don't really know what exists out here as far as other than we had a vegetable stand when I was as a little kid, and I was always trying to learn and take everything in, you know?
Yeah.
And I work on this vegetable stand, putting produce in and stuff, and as my sister and brothers and my parents, they're taking care of the customer stuff, I was always watching how they drive, and I was always curious, you know, to make another move. And I was always taking it all in to learn this stuff. And I always said at the back of my mind, this will be me someday.
Yeah. What is the community's relationship with the local government and the federal government? They're very separate, right?
Yeah, they will. I mean, they had agreement years ago when the Amish people split from us American people.
Yeah.
From as far as schoolhouses. That's how it started out.
Okay.
So they agreed with the government to help paying English school taxes if they don't reach into the Amish.
Okay.
As far as, so that way the Amish can live their life and kind of like do their own thing, but they do pay school tax and they pay land taxes.
Okay. But you don't pay income tax or anything like that?
Not little bit. Like if they have a business where they're selling a lot of, let's say a sawmill where they're selling a lot of lumber and stuff, they will show income.
Okay. Wow. Describe growing up and, what it was like, what your friends were like. What are the relationships like?
Okay. So, yeah, growing up, of course, we used to walk to the school.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we were allowed to use the horse and buggy to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then after school, we had to come home and go in the barn and do chores. Us boys went in the barn, did chores,
Mm-hmm.
getting hay, throwing hay down or silage down and get
Mm-hmm.
ready for chores. And then after that, we went in around 5 o'clock and eat supper. And then we went out and feed all animals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of time we went to bed around 9:30, 10 o'clock in the wintertime. In the summertime, it was kind of whenever we were ready to go because you had to cut hay and you worked late hours, and
Yeah.
at night was a nice cool night to be cutting hay. And then after it's dark and then we went and did chores, it might be more like 11 o'clock to get in
Uh-huh.
bed.
Uh-huh.
But as I got older, a lot of us brothers worked on different farms. My father had us all scattered out.
Within the community.
Yeah, within the community.
Uh-huh.
Like working on other farms, like young married couples starting out.
Yeah.
One of us go work, help them out, get started and stuff like that.
Health among the Amish is characterized by higher incidences of particular genetic and metabolic disorders, especially among the Old Order Amish, which Elmer was born into. But other studies show that the Amish have certain health advantages, either due to genetics or their active lifestyle. According to a study by Franklin and Marshall College, these advantages may include a resistance to asthma and allergies. Overall cancer rates in the Amish are 60% of the age-adjusted rate for Ohio and 56% of the national rate, according to a study by Ohio State University. Because of their very limited use of tobacco, tobacco-related cancers among Amish adults are 30% lower than those of non-Amish Ohio adults. Even skin cancer rates are lower in the Amish, despite the fact that many make their living working outdoors where they are exposed to sunlight and UV rays. But they are typically covered and dressed to work in the sun by wearing wide-brim hats and long sleeves. So there's a lot of cooperation within the community.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And Amish, they do growing up, they do when, let's say somebody gets hurt and stuff, where it's a major hospital bill, where it's a broken bone or something, they go around and they figure out how much it costs, the elders do it, how much it costs, and then they go around and collect. It might come up to a $5-6 per household.
I see.
And they all chip in $5-6.
Yeah.
So it takes the bill off from the person that is going through it.
Right. How do they enforce the rules within the community?
That's forced by the elders.
Mm-hmm.
The elders and the bishop, that's forced by them. In the church, they have every other Sunday they have church. And then in the fall time and in the spring, they have what they call a big church, where only the people that joined the church, that's when they will read out it's kind of like the legal. It's kind of like our government, our rights, what our rights are, pretty much.
Okay.
They go down through what the laws and rules are in the Amish.
Okay. And is there any debate? Do the individual parishioners, members of the community, have any say in the laws? Not
too easy.
Okay.
They pretty much, they keep it years over year over year.
Yeah.
Unless there's, now let's say the government, which it's happening in Ohio. Let's say the government comes in and says, okay, you guys got to have 2 lander in the bookies, flashing light.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in Ohio. Once that happens in it, they're all going to vote on it, and they're gonna show up in massive crowds in the courthouse, and they will not back down lightly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And the thing I always find so interesting is that they do use flashlights. They use Mac lights, stuff like that. And I always thought, why would they not go get a battery reflector and put it in back of the lantern so it flashes to give you a signal, hey, slow down.
Yeah.
Because up here, these roads are not very wide, some of them. You come
Yeah.
over these little knobs 60 mile an hour, and right there's a bucky.
Yeah.
And sometimes even in the fog, you're like, is that a reflector from a telephone pole, or is that a
Right.
what kind of reflector is it?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of accidents in buggies.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of accidents.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Yeah.
Now, in your home, you have no electricity. There's no
Yeah.
refrigerator. There's no dishwasher. There's no microwave. It's all none of that stuff.
No. It's all done by the cook stove.
Okay.
And then there's a washing sink with a hand pump there.
Mm-hmm.
At home, that's how it used to be, where they pump the water right at the where you wash your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as keeping your groceries and stuff, we had a cellar and plus a cool pantry. But we had a huge cellar where everything you try when you're cooking, you're like you got to make sure you're cooking for the people that are showing up and stuff. You know,
Right.
You won't be able to just go stick it in the fridge and
Yeah.
eat it the next meal.
So, like you said before, it's really like living in like the 1800s.
Yes, it is.
The way they lived back then.
$1,000 goes a long ways, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
living other than if you're building and stuff. But as far as grocery wise, you don't buy much grocery other than like in the summertime when you can. Most food is all canned, and we had over 1,000 quarts of vegetables to meat, bologna,
Wow.
chicken,
Yeah.
plum, peaches, whatever,
Wow.
down in the cellar, all in shelves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like back in 1800. Plus, we had a root cellars to keep our potatoes, onions.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And you make money from selling produce. That's your main source of income?
yep, making money from selling produce and also from selling cattle.
Oh, okay.
Like having some star heifers and sell them
Okay.
before they have their babies or whatever, and then shipping milk. They do ship milk.
Mhm.
It's getting pretty hard to be shipping milk nowadays because of to keep the milk cold enough.
Yeah.
What they're doing now is they're milking it and they put it in the milk house in a concrete vat that's below the ground,
Uh-huh.
and then they pull it out of there and they take it down to what they call a dumping station, where like 4 or 5 tanks are in there, like 4 or 5 farmers, and they each one of them have their own tank.
Uh-huh.
So and then Acrimart pulls in there and pick each one of the farmer's tank up,
Uh-huh.
the milk out of the tanks.
Uh-huh.
But each farmer's tank is marked, so that way they keep track
Okay.
of their valuable and stuff.
Okay. Talk about yourself growing up. What kind of kid were you? And kind of what were your interests?
Well, me growing up, I always worked on the farm. My father had me working out to a couple different other farms a couple times. But I grew up on a farm. When I'm 4 or 5 years old, we boys start driving teams of horses.
Wow.
Like when it comes to doing hay and stuff, you're standing on a upright end of the wagon. On the front end is upright about 6-8 feet high, and up there's a board. There's probably 16 inches in between,
Uh-huh.
and then there's a little board on the top. You stand on the top driving this team, and then to fill this load of hay up, and you fill this wagon full of hay, and the guy shoveling the hay in the back, when you're a little kid, you're trying to hold your team because the guy can only shovel so fast when it's hot out.
Yeah.
But when I was 6 years old, my father, he had me plowing down the road by myself.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I was so short, I couldn't undo the tucks on the belching horses.
Uh-huh.
So they had to undo the tucks, and I had the horse just drag it until I got to the field so I can
Yeah.
reach to hook them up. And
Yeah.
I remember I was so short, I could barely reach the lever to put the plow out of gear or in gear because I'm standing on the main frame to pull it down or push it up,
Uh-huh.
put it out of gear.
Yeah. Sounds like your father just treated you like a normal person, didn't
Yeah.
compensate for your size.
No, he just treated me like everybody else.
Yeah.
he was always about trying to treat his kid all equal
Mm-hmm.
at home. Yeah, I had pretty much everything I had going for me, going against me. So at a young age, I realized that I have to step it up if I don't want to be left behind,
Yeah. Were you a good student? Were you good in school?
For the most part, I was a little rebel, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Okay.
I was full energy.
Yeah.
In school, I was very, very easy learned in school.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, English was not my favorite. I was more of a math person, numbers person,
Okay.
and I always did good in math. But my English was always like 80s. My scores were in the 80s. My math was more like 100 or in the 90s, high 90s.
Okay.
But yeah, when I was 10 years old, my father, I get up and we go do the chores, and then after that we eat breakfast, go to school, come home, and then I come home, we throw hay and silage down, and then I had to run down, help our neighbor out.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Ross Cawson,
Mm-hmm.
and as of now, it's called Beaver Creek, company called Beaver Creek, and he was selling grain to the Amish guys or to anybody that wants to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go down there bagging grain, 100-pound bags, and I'm only weighing probably, I don't know, 40 pounds at max.
Yeah.
And at first, I couldn't drag these bags. I barely could move it. And then, end of that year, well, I noticed in school, I like to work trying to get strengths,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to get bullied a lot.
Yeah.
So I worked very hard at this place, and I finally could use the grain bag or the bag cart to move the bags around. And then finally, I could swing them on my back, and I worked very hard
Wow.
till end of third grade. This eighth grader boy, we had a wrestling match,
Yeah.
and this boy, he's weighing at 180, and at this point, I'm about now 49 pounds or something.
Yeah.
And we had a match, and I was scared to death. I thought he's going to about kill me. And when we had a match, he's around his lips saying he's going to take me down with one hand.
Yeah.
And at this time, I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, quick as it was go, I ran up and I jumped up and I grabbed him right here by the neck.
Yeah.
And I kicked right behind his knee.
Yeah.
And I dropped him on his back, and he tried to reach up, and I clamped him right across shoulder to neck.
Mm-hmm.
And I pinned him so hard he had to give up. And from there on,
Yeah.
I was known to be the strongest one in the school until I got out of school. And that's when I really I had a kind of name for myself.
Uh-huh.
But before that, they jump over top of me. I get bullied and stuff like that. Well, one day I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to either be a wimp or stand up.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna take this shit. So yeah.
And then they left you alone.
And then after that, they knew who I was.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you. Good for you. Wow. And you were 49 pounds.
Yeah, I was 49 pounds.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
So as you grow up, you get more responsibility within the community.
Once you come up to like 16 and a half,
Yeah.
it's when a lot of Amish, the way I grew up, most of them Amish start to the youngs where they go out dating girls and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we didn't have the chance, like a lot of people ask me if I had the chance what they call Rumspringa, where a lot of them call Rumspringa. Back in the days, they had the chance to 2 years, they could leave from 16 to 18, they could come out here in the world.
Rumspringa is a rite of passage and period of growth in adolescence for some Amish youth, during which time they face fewer restrictions on their behavior and are not subject to the Ordnung, the specific system of community norms that governs their sect. Elmer's community didn't follow the practice of Rumspringa, and other Amish communities choose not to as well. But among those that do, Rumspringa usually starts at age 16. Teenagers may be encouraged to explore otherwise forbidden or strictly regulated behaviors before making the choice to commit to the church. The length of Rumspringa is a matter of personal choice. It continues until the adolescent decides to join the church and be baptized as an adult member, accepting the responsibilities that entails. Most young adults make their decisions before age 23, with the majority deciding within 2 years.
Well, they took that away from us.
You call it the English life.
Yeah, the English life or the worldly life.
That's how they refer to the rest of the United States as the English.
Yep.
Wow. So it dates way back to like colonial times almost.
Yeah. It feels that's all I ever knew.
Yeah.
And then as I start talking to people, some was called American, and then more I listen, some call it the worldly people.
Okay.
It's like, so I'm at the point where I don't really know what the correct way to call them.
Yeah.
Other than American.
So what is that term that you said where they get 2 years where they can try it out?
Oh, so yeah, to go back to that,
Yeah.
they get 2 years where from 16 to 18 where they can come out in the world. A lot of them go to the fire department or they go out trying the English life to see if they want to stay English or if they want to stay Amish.
Yeah.
And they can actually, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Well, they took that away from us.
Ah.
They kind of like, I don't want to say they overstep our boundaries, but
Right.
kind of that's how we felt.
Yeah.
So as I got older, I'm like, well, I'll leave when I get, once I get older, my idea was always I'm going to leave this life and I'm going to try the English life or however you may say so.
Yeah. So you're just curious about what the rest of the world is because your world is so small and so contained.
Yeah, and they do not teach you history. They don't like in school. They don't teach you history, so you don't really know much about it. And they really try to keep it even from the kids'
Wow.
young age. They won't tell you that the Amish people actually came from the American, like pretty much start their own cult.
Right.
They don't teach you that. They don't want the kids even know about that stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you just learn math and English and probably study the Bible a lot.
Yeah, studied the Bible.
Yeah.
Studied German, and you do learn like how to spell.
You study German?
Yep, because we did German reading, and
Yeah.
you do learn how to spell English and stuff like that. But it's basically we went just up to 8th grade.
Yeah. And as you say, there's no phones, there's no cell phones, there's no computers,
No cell
there's
phones.
no television. So you really don't have access to the rest of the world either.
No, you don't. And you have no clue what's going on out here in the world. Now, the older ones that are married that deal with American people, they know a little bit what goes on, but they will not tell the kids. They will not.
Because they're dealing in terms of business,
Yep.
selling their milk or selling their grain and so on.
Yeah.
So they have some contact with the outside world, but the kids really don't.
Yeah, the kids don't. And another thing about the kids is the way the Amish work, the way I grew up, you would have to work for your father until you're 21 and all the money goes to your father.
Ah.
You don't have no say so where you go or what you do for work. He tells you to go clean this guy's barn out. That's what you're doing. Like,
Yeah.
there's no and he keeps the money
Yeah.
and they'll buy you all the clothes and stuff like that.
Right. But if you want something for yourself, you're out of luck.
Yeah, you ask your father and you better have a good explanation.
Okay. Now, what about a bicycle? Do you ride bikes?
That's interesting you asked that because my grandfather, when he was 6 years old, they had a split in the church.
Uh-huh.
And what a split is in the church is like a couple bishops don't agree with each other. Let's say you're a bishop and I'm a bishop, and then you're going to allow bicycles and I'm going to say, nope, I'm not going to allow it. Well, once two bishops don't agree on something, they got to have a split.
Wow.
And that's what they call the doors are open. So once the doors are open from spring to fall, everybody can join each side of the bishop. And then when it's once they say the doors are closed up, you have to decide which bishop, which side of the aisle you're at.
Uh-huh.
So now once the one makes his own, he has his rules a little different, and the other guy's rule is a little different too.
Mm-hmm.
So they cannot marry these boys over here cannot go over on the other side, Bishop, and
Ah.
marry them girls and stuff.
Oh, wow. So it's really separated.
Yeah, so to go back to about a bicycle, my grandfather was 6 years old when that split happened. So my great grandfather went one way and he went to the strictest way,
Yeah.
where they were not going to allow a bicycle anymore because of they start putting lights on a bicycle. Back when they had metal wheels and no lights and reflectors on it, they called it Amish. But then, which is funny because it's all pedal
Yeah.
with your own strengths.
Right. It's just generated by the wheels turning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what they didn't like was the most part they didn't like was they put air in the rubber.
Oh.
There's something against that they do not like. When they put rubber on them raves, that was the end of it.
Wow.
So my grandfather, he was 6 years old and he had to cry for that part.
Wow. You have tires, but you're not allowed to put air in the tires.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So even your buggies, the tires aren't inflated. They're just rubber. Yeah.
Well, wooden wheels with a metal ring all the way around it, and it's flat.
Okay. Wow.
And they have to take so when they're working on a machine shop that's working on the wheel, they do all the woodwork and all the metal, roll it all out and everything. Then they got to take it to a American person to get it welded, do a good flat chop of welding.
Oh, because you don't weld.
Yeah, they don't, not in my Amish community. They don't have a welder. They don't.
Wow.
They're very, and little they know that they could run a welder off batteries if they don't.
Yeah.
But they do have farm engine and stuff like that, some minimum. They don't allow too much.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then how do you become a bishop?
So that's a good question. When you become a bishop, so what happens? So let's say the church, let's say the members, you can only get about 30 different households in one house for a church. So once it becomes crowded, the kids are all grown up, they split it. So they're going to cut the church through as far as like county lines and stuff like that. And they're like, okay, we got to cut it in half. So now they're going to make elders. And then after a couple years, elders, the other bishop takes care of that until it got bigger, and then they make a bishop.
Okay.
So when it comes to make a bishop, there's a different part of it. They come make a bishop. They put they take singing books that the Amish use, and they put a note in one book. The other elders, they put a note in one book, and they mix all them books up. So and then all the members that joined the church will walk up and they'll choose who they think should be bishop.
Okay.
So and then let's say there's 6 books up there. So they take the 6 most voted ones of the elders and they take their votes. And then and then the church starts again, and then everybody goes and sits down, and then the bishop announced that there's 6 books up here, and he has to tell them who got the most votes.
Mm-hmm.
So once that's pronounced, they have to walk up and grab one of them books. They don't know where the note is, what it is. So nobody knows where it is and then they all grab the books, and then the bishop will walk down through and open the books up.
Yeah.
And once he opens the book up, and if the note falls out, he's going to be bishop. And that's bishop for life.
Wow.
Unless death or very ill where he can.
Wow. So you get to vote to a certain extent, and then after that, it's just sort of luck or arbitrary.
Yeah. It's very out here in the English world. We would probably call it very dictator.
Yeah.
Like it's either their way or the highway.
Right.
or like. If you stand up against them trying to be like, okay, you don't agree with it, you better have a good explanation, otherwise you get punished in the church for standing up against them.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
And what is that punishment like? What does that consist of?
It all depends. Like there's a lot of different punishments, but a lot of them are just minimum, like small punishments as far as when you get in trouble in the church. you will get punished. It's through the church, and what it is basically the bishop tells everybody what you did, and he promised that he's not going to do it again. They kind of shame you.
Okay, it's all based on shame, public shaming.
It is kind of public shaming, is what it is.
Yeah.
And I was a little rebel back in the days. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And so when I was 18, 19 years old, we were, of course, boys are gonna be boys, and we're running our horses, like seeing which horse is the fastest or something.
Yeah.
And they came to me. Of course, I was the oldest one that was not married at the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of supposed to be a leader for the younger boys.
Yeah.
So they came to me and they're like, we got to stop running our horses so much.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of surprised. So they're like, well, we don't have no Bible words for it, but this is just man-made rule, because I asked them about it and they said it's man-made rule.
Yeah.
Well, when it's just man-made rules, they don't really have a leg to stand on. They can try to force it, but it's not really going to work. So whatever. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
We boys, we went to the neighbors and we talked them into finding us bicycles. And so we boys started all using bikes. So there's like 8 of us riding bicycles. We know we're going to get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
We just want to prove how it's going to work if they tell us not to run our horses. What they were trying to do is tell us don't run your horses so much. And if you, let's say, you want to go see another couple when they're dating or something, you are allowed to go up, visit another couple until 12 o'clock, and then you're supposed to get off upstairs. Well, they want to make it where only 2 boys can go visit a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were back then, we're showing up by 16, 20 of them. You know what that cost. 16, 20 boys hanging out at dark when their parents ain't with them, you know. It costs a lot of troubles sometimes.
Yeah.
So, they came, well, we started using bicycles. They came to me, and they came to me, and they're like, Elmer, we heard your guys are using bicycles. Is that true? I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
It is true. And he goes, why is that? I say, you guys said don't be running our horses so much, so we decided just going with bicycles. And then they punished us some, but not much, because they were afraid that they knew they overstepped the boundaries pretty much. And I just laid it right out. I said, if I hear one more word about using the horses, I'm going to rent a car. And they didn't. That was the end of it. They never said anything about using more
running horses. And
how much we use our horses.
Yeah. So you were pushing back, pushing the boundaries.
I was all about, well, whenever there was anything going on in the church, they always preach that they have Bible. Their rules are based on Bible.
Justification. Yeah.
Yep. And so when it was, like, when they came and told you it's a man-made rule, they had to tell you if it's a man-made rule.
Okay.
So when it's a man-made rule, there's probably going to be most of us sitting back there. You're going to take another inch from us. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, because you didn't have, like, so I got in trouble one time. I just joined the church, and I walked in the dollar store because it was pouring down, raining. I forgot my umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked in there, picked this umbrella up. I'm on my way home from working on a sawmill.
Yeah.
And it was cold rain. It was almost like snow, and I'm soaking wet.
Yeah.
So I stopped in this dollar store, see if they got any kind of umbrella. Sure shit, there was an umbrella there.
Yeah.
And I grabbed that umbrella and I opened it up. Well, it had one clear sheet in this black umbrella. It was a big black umbrella with one clear sheet. And I'm like, I looked at it, I'm like,
yeah, so you can see through it.
Yeah. And I'm like, boy, this guy was smart. This guy understood an umbrella. So that's perfect for a bucket. Yeah. And I grabbed it, didn't see nothing of it. It's just a piece of plastic.
Yeah.
It was not so much about that you couldn't have that umbrella if I had asked the bishop first. I didn't think nothing of it.
Yeah.
I got punished for that I bought it and I was using it. Somebody saw me and they're talking about it and they're like, oh, that's a new thing. I was supposed to talk to the bishop first before I bought it.
Just because of the clear plastic panel.
Yeah, the clear plastic sheet. But then again, they use clear plastic to build greenhouse, the same stuff.
Yeah. So that makes no sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was just like, and they came to me, and of course, I said, this is the smartest umbrella you could ever buy for a horse and buggy, open buggy, you know?
Right.
So they came to me and they're like, Elmer, that's a new thing. And they try to make me trouble for it.
Yeah.
And I looked at them. I'm like, where in the Bible do you find that? And that was my words. Well, I got punished because I got little smart mouths and bought it before I talked to them, you know, the whole gang.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, you're better off if you don't want to get punished by something, just follow their narrative.
Their rules. Now, you said you joined the church. At a certain age, you're invited to join the church?
Yeah, that's when you turn 18.
Okay.
When you turn 18, you join the church. And then after you join the church, you're supposed to be kind of like your own person. Now, you still work for your father until you're 21.
Yeah.
Once you're 21, you're on your own. And you... all the money is yours, but you kind of like in the English world, I guess you would say work like a slave for your father until you're 21. Like you have no say so whatsoever.
Right. So when you turn 21, what do you choose to do?
So when I turned 21, I helped my brother Harvey out quite a bit. He was one of the oldest one. He had having kids and stuff, and he was a hard-working man, but he seemed like he just didn't know how to make money to sustain. So I helped him out some, and then I helped a couple brothers out, and I worked on sawmills and stuff. And then I decided, well, there was a lot of my sister and brothers. They're married by this time.
Yeah.
So when you go out and work for one of them, they all expect you're going to come work for them.
Yeah.
And so many of them, they're having this hissy fit about, hey, you help him out, not me. Finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop helping you all out. I'm going to go do carpentry work. So I used to do carpentry work, like building cabins, building decks on houses, and you name it, building fences, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's how you made your living. That's how you made your money.
Yeah.
And you had your own house at that point?
No, I still live at home.
Okay.
I still live at home. The way I grew up, they did not like when you have your own house until you're married.
Okay.
Because they didn't want you to be able to have like stuff going on they don't know about it, or be able to bring alcohol in your house and they don't know about it, and they have no rights to just come in if nobody complains, you know.
Yeah. So if you're a single guy, they don't trust you.
Yeah, kind of that. It's a very fine line. I was a single guy. I was running a shop. I was running a sawmill, and I had some boys working on the sawmill.
Yeah.
I was trying to make a go of it. And I was working to buy the second sawmill, and then they came to me, and they're like, we don't have anything in the Bible about it, but because I was not married, they didn't like when I have that much going on.
Yeah.
Because you kind of become a power structure when you're rolling in some money and you're kind of your own.
Yeah.
They don't really like that.
You're a threat.
Yeah, I was a threat to their belief problem.
And so they're pressuring you to either get married.
They pressured me to get married. At this point, I was just trying to fill my pocket a little bit, so when I leave the Amish, so I can sustain, you know.
So already you're thinking ahead about leaving.
Yep.
Yeah.
I saved up so I can, when I leave, so I can sustain. But they came to me, and they didn't like that I have a shop going on, a sawmill. Finally, I got rid of the mill, got rid of the other stuff, and I was running the shop.
Yeah.
And then I did carpentry work on the side, and plus I was helping a guy shoeing horses, putting horseshoes on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I used to do. Every Monday and every Friday, I would be putting shoes on horses for the bucky horses, pulling horses, derby, racetrack horses, pretty much.
Yeah.
What we got our hands on. Pretty much what was making us money.
Yeah. So when did you make the decision in your mind that I'm going to leave? I want something broader than this. I want to see the world. I want to live differently.
Well, I was younger age. But probably after I was over 21, I decided I wanna leave the Amish. In my head, I was like, I'm gonna leave the Amish, and I worked. Well, my first year, 21. To go back, my first year, 21, my father's cattle got out, and so we're trying to catch these cattle. We're going after these cattle. There's about 7, 8 of us riders, and I was the only one that could rope them by the head and catch them. I was more of a cowboy,
Yeah.
and I used to break horses also. So we're going up the road, and this, I don't know, third, fourth day, I decided I'm going to stay behind everybody until we get close to the cattle.
Yeah.
I had a Rapian Morgan cross. He was a wild little thing. And of course, he wants to go. He didn't like to be left behind. And I'm trying to hang on to it, and I broke the saddle strap. So I'm on the blacktop. There's like 7, 8 of us on the blacktop. And I quick jump in front of the saddle. Of course, there's a little gelding. That saddle went right in front of his back legs and tickled him.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he started kicking. I'm trying to get him off the road. And all of a sudden, he reared up on the back end and just swing around. And kind of like Kyle Silver in that movie.
Yeah.
And I end up flying for a blacktop.
Wow.
I had a handful of manes in my left hand.
Yeah.
And my right arm, I had hold of the reins while I flew. And I quick put my arm in front of the face.
Yeah.
And I thought I broke my arm.
Yeah.
And then when I got up to walk on my leg, I couldn't stand on my left leg. End up breaking it right above the knee.
Oh, wow.
So that was,
wow.
It cost me pretty much my whole 21 year of making money. Cost me all that pretty much in the hospitals.
Yeah. So what happens when something like that happens? Do you go to the hospital?
Yeah, we went to the hospital. I wanted to check to make sure everything is good.
Yeah.
And went to see a doctor, and he said that everything is still in place. He goes, we can either put screws in or mobilizer or a cast. And I choose a mobilizer. And then I went home, and I put burdock leaves on this. He gave me some kind of liniment.
Yeah.
But I put burdock leaves
Burdock.
on this leg.
From a tree or a bush is burdock?
It's like a plant. You know what a horseradish plant? Kind of looked like a horseradish plant.
Okay.
Yep. You take them leaf and you pick the big bone out. It's very, very strong, pulling poisonous out of your wound or wherever you're hurt and stuff.
Wow. So you just apply it to the skin?
Yep. You put it on your skin, but you never leave it on there longer than 2 hours because it can actually burn you.
Oh, wow.
And at first, when it happens, it will pull pain out of your legs so strong where you can barely take it sometimes.
Wow.
And I used to take it off and put it back on for a little bit, take it off.
Yeah.
And then finally I could leave it on for 2 hours. Well, 2 hours at a time. What I used to do is put the leaves on there, and then you can literally just walk out in the garden or wherever you find them.
Yeah.
And try to find healthy leaves, and you just take the big bone out and you put it on your leg wherever it's broken or open wound, and then you put what I did is I put shrink wrap around it to hold the heat in.
Yeah.
And then something else around that.
Yeah.
But 3 weeks later, I went into the hospital to do a checkup, and a doctor looked at me and he goes, "What are you using?" And I thought I'm in trouble because I was using burdock.
Yeah.
And he goes, No, I just never seen a leg heal that fast.
Wow.
So I told him what I'm doing. So, well, I had to start bending that leg because that leg was so stiff.
According to John Stoughton of the website organicfacts.com, quote, burdock is a wonderful herb known for its numerous health benefits, which include aiding in digestion, detoxifying the liver, and balancing hormones. It is also good for improving skin quality, reducing inflammation, and lowering blood pressure. It's a genus of the flowering biennial whose scientific name is Arctium. Its plants, leaves, and stems hold significant value as herbal or alternative remedies. Burdock root can be eaten in large quantities as a root vegetable and is very rich in important fibers. The dried leaves and seeds can also be used to extract bur oil, which has a wide range of medicinal uses. The first use of burdock root in Europe was recorded in the medieval period, but it is also known in Chinese herbal medicine and likely dates back considerably further.
6 weeks later, I was walking without crutches.
Wow.
It healed up pretty good.
Wow. So you use a lot of what we would call non-traditional medicine.
Yep.
Like folk medicine.
Yep.
Like leaves and potions and stuff like that.
Leaves and like roots and stuff like that. I don't know. I do know a little bit about home remedy stuff, but not like my mom. Back in the days, I was always like, why do I have to remember this stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
And then I wish I remembered.
That's valuable information, right?
Yeah, it is very valuable, I think.
Yeah. So the doctor was impressed.
Yeah, he was very impressed about it.
Did he know about burdock leaves?
No, he did not. He did not know about that you can use burdock leaves. He looked at it and he goes, I just never, after the x-ray, he goes, I just never seen a leg heal that fast.
So the bone had healed.
Yeah, the bone was already healed on there pretty strong.
Yeah.
And it was so much in pain still because I had mobilizer on and he told me not to bend that leg unless he tells me.
Yeah.
So I was at home trying to heal this leg.
Yeah.
So when I start bending it, I asked him if I'm going to break it off again if I bend it because it hurt so bad. My muscles were so stiff in the knee.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, you're not going to break that.
Yeah.
He goes, you should have started bending a week before that. So I would take a stove poker or where you poke in the stove, take that thing, I would hang it on the bottom of my pants and I pull. And water would run right out of my eyes. It was in a lot of pain trying to bend my leg. That time I was like, there's no way I'll ever walk on that leg again. And then, now I don't even notice it.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. And all you used were burdock leaves.
Yep.
No cast or anything.
No. I had a mobilizer on, but that I could take on and off whenever I wanted to.
Right.
Because I did not want a cast on where I can't get to it. Back in the days, I was all about home remedy stuff, if I could get to it.
Yeah.
And then when I was, to go back to another story, when I was probably 19, I believe I was.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on my sister my sister's farm, and her man, we're filling a silo, and silo almost got full. Her man told me, Elmer, run inside the silo and run up and start shoveling silage. It's almost full.
Yeah.
Well, there's about 10 guys there with wagons filling this silo and putting corn through it.
Yeah.
And so I got into the chute and I start crawling up. I heard something come down. So I quick jumped down. I was only up about 12, 15 feet. So I jumped down. I was expecting it's a rock.
Yeah.
Well, his brother Harvey was going in the silo, and he had a pitchfork in his hand, the D handle, and he happened to drop it when he went to crawl in the silo.
Yeah.
And I didn't know he's even on the inside. That thing came down and stuck me right through my shoulder.
Oh, my God.
So I held it and I hollered up. I'm like, hey, get down here. He goes, what? I'm like, get down here. So he comes down, and he's about 45 years old.
Yeah.
I had to grab, with my right arm, I grabbed the bottom of the step, them rods, the metal rods go across. I grab a hold of that step, and after the third time him trying to pull that thing out of there, we got it out of there. I reached over and I helped pulling the thing out of there.
Wow, and this is the pitchfork.
Yeah, it went right. There was 4 prongs.
Oh,
there was
my God.
12-prong pitchforks. And the thing, I don't know how heavy they are, but the thing was up 40 feet.
Yeah.
It came right down, right through my shoulder.
Oh, my God. That must have been painful as hell.
Yeah, it was painful.
Yeah.
I filled the holes right full of salt. Shoved salt in each hole.
Wow.
As quick as it happened. I went up and I shoveled 3 more loads. Well, after that...
Whoa, you kept going?
Yeah, I kept going. I didn't want to... I didn't want that arm to sit still where it gets stiff.
Yeah.
And I already knew I'm gonna
Must have been painful as hell when you put salt in those holes.
at it little bit, not
Yeah.
if you put the first 5 minutes, you put salt on an open cut,
Yeah.
it hardly stings. But there's like when you cut yourself with a knife or anything, there's hardly anything that I know of will heal a open cut faster than salt.
Wow.
Now, if you wait 10 minutes,
Yeah.
you're gonna think it's more than salt. It will
It'll hurt.
it'll hurt a little.
Yeah.
So yeah, I filled it full of salt, shoveled 3 more loads, and by
Wow.
this time the blood was just coming out of this shirt. I had to do something.
Yeah.
And it started really getting painful, and I was afraid I can't crawl down the saddle if I don't leave. So I crawled down the outside because of when you fill a saddle, that gets so strong you gotta be careful going inside the chute.
Yeah.
So I crawled down the outside, and Harvey's brother, Mosey, his nickname was Bull Mosey. He was a go-getter.
Yeah.
He asked me, Elmer, what happened? So I told him what happened. He goes, oh, you wait until his brother sees him coming out there. So he went, I went over the other end of the barn watching what happens.
Yeah.
And he went across that field. When he saw him coming, he took off and went home. He didn't want to have to deal with Mosey. So, because in the Amish, whenever you crawl up the saddle, most time you put a baler string on the D handle, you hang it on your shoulder.
Yeah.
So you have both hands free to crawl.
Yeah.
So not an accident like that happened
Right.
but I didn't know he was up there nothing.
Yeah.
Well, after I got down, after Mosey left, I went in the house and I soaked my shoulder. I laid in a bathtub and I soaked it with dry mustard and English salt water for 20 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And then after I got out of there, I filled the holes right full of salt again, and I put burdock leaves on it.
Uh-huh.
And I wrapped it. I never was off work. I didn't skip.
Really?
I didn't. There was no calling in sick or anything.
Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah.
Amazing. The traditional medicine, or whatever you want to call it, is that effective.
Oh, yeah.
More effective than our medicine in certain ways.
It is. Like when you put burdock. So, not to remind you, this pitchfork was standing in the sallow shandy.
Yeah.
And anybody that knows the acid of silage will make them all rusty. It's been standing there all summer.
Sure.
So that was really rusty.
Yeah.
A lot of rust in these holes. So when I put burdock on the next morning, when I took it off, there was rust piles on each holes.
Oh, wow. So it just pulled it out.
Yep, the burdock pulled it right out. And there was only one hole that went through on the bottom, came out the bottom. But it was one right here, right straight through my shoulder.
Man, oh man.
I got pretty lucky. I never saw a doctor. I never had a tetanus shot, nothing.
Yeah. Wow.
And which I didn't know even what a tetanus shot is back then.
And no infection or anything like that.
No,
Nothing.
No infection, never gave me.
And you kept working with that shoulder.
Yeah, I kept right on going with that shoulder. I went that night after I soaked it in English salt and dry mustard. I went out in the barn and I did all the chores. He had about 100 head in the barn, did all the chores because they're still filling sallow. And then I was all about not letting that arm rest because I know it's going to stiffen up.
Yeah.
So, and then I went to bed that night and I put burdock on the salt. Next morning I woke up and it was a little stiff, a little sore.
Yeah.
And that healed up so fast. I didn't even miss any work.
Wow.
Because of it.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know about calling in sick like they do nowadays.
So when did you actually leave the community? Were there any circumstances or stories around that, or did you just make a decision and leave?
I just made a decision of all from growing up and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the reason I had wanted to leave the community was as I got older, I understood the strengths it's going to take to harness the horses up and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm only 3'11" tall. So when I got to harness a horse up, I had to throw that harness.
Yeah.
It was not just be able to just put it over the back a little bit, you know.
Right.
So I'm like, when I get older,
Yeah.
this is not gonna be for me. And plus, being born the way I am, it's like a joint disease
Yeah.
where when it gets cold, if I'm too much in the cold, it arthritis settles right in my joints, and that it
Oh,
tends to get me kind of sore and stiff.
yeah.
But now out here in the English world, it's totally different. You go out in the truck, you turn that heat on, you yeah.
Some of those conveniences are good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the good part of it. And so as I got older, I I decided one day I decided, okay, I'm leaving. For like 2 years, I was like, okay, leaving this day.
Yeah.
And I went to, I don't know, 7 miles down the road, person that I knew very well.
Hmm.
I went to her, and I knew them my whole life.
Yeah.
She was kind of like my English mom.
Yeah.
So I went there and I talked to her. I want to leave this day in
Yeah.
2 years from now.
Yeah.
And so I got myself ready, and I got it in my head that this is gonna be it.
Yeah.
And I worked and stuff. And once that day came, I went over a couple days before, and I arranged it. They came a little bit down the road. They pulled in this farmer's place, and well, when I left a note up in my dresser, and I left middle of the night,
Yeah.
and I ran down the road, and she gave me a ride over to her house, and then she that night she hemmed me some pants and gave me a shirt.
Yeah.
That shirt, she gave me a shirt that says "Fish and Shut Up." Yeah.
So, how did your family take it? I mean, once you leave the community, are you just completely out? You're shunned?
At first, they were not happy, obviously. It was hard on them.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy to go back to see my parents' faces and stuff.
Yeah.
But the elders, they came and talked to me after probably 2, 3 months later,
Yeah.
trying to get me to come back.
Yeah.
And basically, the bishop came and he goes, "I saw you're trying a different life." I say, "Yep." He goes, "Are you coming back?" I'm like, "Nope. I cut my hair. I have no plans to come back."
Yeah.
So,
You cut your hair and you cut your beard.
yep.
Yeah.
The first night I cut my beard, shaved it, and I cut my hair.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right, it felt weird when I first did it. It just felt like it's very open.
Yeah. Yeah.
After when you have
Yeah.
long hair down here and straight back.
Yeah.
So she she gave me a haircut and everything, helped me
Yeah.
with all that. Well, when the elders showed up, of course, I was all about wearing a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, you know. And I was working on this farm. Of course, I didn't have a social security number. I did not have a driver's license, none of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my birth certificate either.
Yeah.
So when they showed up, I was working on the farm, and then I went to check some cattle, and I was on the four-wheeler. I just learned how to drive a wheeler, so I came riding up there, cowboy hat on, cowboy boots. And they're like, "Oh, we saw you start trying a different life." I'm like, "Yep."
Yeah.
I just explained it. I'm not coming back. So they went on their way, and then I stopped in, see my parents later.
Yeah.
And my father, first thing he said when I stopped in, he goes, "You got to go put your Amish clothes on before you walk in my house." So I did.
Wow. Yeah.
The first year, I could still wear these Amish clothes, and as I got older, I filled out more.
Yeah.
And so the next time I showed up with the clothes, and I told them I can't wear them anymore.
Yeah.
But they still accept me.
Yeah.
And they are always like, "Elmer, you're still our son."
Yeah.
When I go, I always give me a cup of coffee and a couple of cookies. My mom's still my mom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So now still doing farm work or other things?
Yeah, I help out some on a farm.
Uh-huh.
Last year, I bought myself a bulldozer.
Yeah.
And he bought himself excavator. So we do a little driveways, making roads in the woods, and
Uh-huh.
do little site jobs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he has about 100 head on his beef farm.
Okay.
About a month ago, I put a road in for the friend of mine up in the woods. We put a road through the woods, and we built a hunting cabin up on this knoll.
Wow.
So that's what I've been doing, other than trying to talk to people, getting my story out there.
Yeah. So how long now have you been outside the community?
Well, I've been out here a little over 2 years.
Oh, okay. So it's pretty recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of things to adjust to.
Yeah, there is a lot of things to adjust to. Yeah. When I first left, I had to go find my birth certificate.
Yeah.
So I finally figured out where some of them were born in, or they got their birth certificates through the courthouse in the little town of Depoister. And then somehow I realized some of them was through Auckensburg Hospital.
Uh-huh.
And I walked in there and sure shit, that's where it was. And then I went from there, got a social security number activated, and now I'm driving, and
wow,
this is where I'm at.
Wow, good for you. And what do you make of this English world? It's pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, I love it out here. I mean, for me,
yeah,
I think you're a pretty free man out here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, there's rules, and you have the government. There's things you gotta follow,
Yeah.
But that's one thing in the Amish also, like as far as when it came to hunting, fishing, they followed the government rules on that stuff.
Okay. So you were allowed to hunt. You were allowed to have a rifle.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
you were allowed to have a rifle.
Yeah.
I was surprised they didn't have to just use bow and arrows.
Yeah, same here. I would kind of expect that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is funny. Well, now I'm not sure how they get their rifles, other than just buying it, neighbor or this or that.
Yeah.
Who knows how they get them? But back in the days when I bought my rifle from a gun shop, and he knew who I was, and he used my fishing license.
Yeah.
When I went and I bought that rifle for identification.
Yeah. So you still go back on holidays to visit your parents, or is it restricted?
Occasionally. I don't necessarily go back on the holidays, but I still go back, and I'm still in touch with my family.
Okay. Now you're making new friends all throughout the English community.
Yeah, it's a very interesting how I get in touch with people.
Yeah.
Sometimes people ask me how I got in touch with Dave.
Yeah, because we met through David Usick.
Yeah. So sometimes I have to think about it, and I'm like, well, it was through his book. I was just very inspired about this book, the Giant Killer book. So that's how I found him, through the internet.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Elmer. This has been, really interesting, and you're really a very unique person with a really interesting experience. It's been a very interesting journey for you, and it's just starting, really, because you're, starting on a new life. Don't forget your knowledge of the traditional medicine could come in very useful sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I wish I would have. I have quite a little bit in me, but I wish I'd have remembered it back instead of thinking I'm not going to need this stuff ever,
There's some useful skills and knowledge that you learned from your Amish community that you can apply, that we're not really so in touch with here in our English world.
Yeah, I see it more and more every day.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, I think that's going to be very valuable someday, the way things are going.
Well, Elmer, thanks again. God bless you, man.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank my friend, Dave Usick, for introducing me to Elmer and making this interview possible. Dave is the author of the excellent book, The Giant Killer, about his friendship with 4'7" Richard Flaherty, the shortest man to serve in the U.S. Army. That story was featured previously on this podcast. It's the September 24th, 2003 episode if you want to check it out. Little People of America defines dwarfism as a medical or genetic condition known as achondroplasia that usually results in an adult height of 4'10" or shorter among both men and women. The average height of an adult with dwarfism is 4 feet, but typical heights range from 2'8" to 4'8". In cases of proportionate dwarfism, both the limbs and torso are small, intelligence is normal, and most have a nearly normal life expectancy. People with dwarfism can usually bear children, though there can be some risks to mother and child. Based on meta-analysis, the worldwide birth prevalence of achondroplasia is estimated to be 4.6 per 100,000. We're deeply grateful to Elmer for sharing his remarkable story. Elmer Miller is today's hero behind the headlines.
Heroes Behind Headlines. Executive producer Ralph Pizzullo. Produced and engineered by Mike Dawson. Music provided by Extreme Music. For exclusive content, please join our Patreon group at patreon.com/heroesbehindheadlines.